Good morning, fellow students. It's a very good day today. Last time we already passed through procurement and we covered a series of topics in the procurement. And I may not go back so much, so you will follow from the previous slides. So as I promised last time, today I'm going to pick from the supply management. And at the end of this topic, I expect you to understand on what is supply management. Then later we shall look at supply chain management, which is the backbone of the procurement and logistics. So straight away, we begin with defining supply management. I know it's not a new word to you, the students. The word supply as being close to procurement. So in our definition here, we say management of internal or external supply systems. This includes procurement itself, which is part of the item which has to be managed in the supply management process. So we say we are managing the internal systems, which include the procurement functions. That includes the planning. We plan procurement, we control it, and also monitor the procurement process. And when we look at the external, we talk about the suppliers, those who are supplying the company or the organization. Then supply comes in two ways. It could be those who are supplying raw materials for production. Then the production is done. Then we also manage the supply process of the people who could be, maybe we say, the third party logistics, who help us to supply those products to our final consumers. So basically, when we talk of supply management, we look at the supply process in the concept of internally and also externally. When we continue and we look at the nature, so the strategic nature of the supply management, we say it goes beyond the procurement and the purchasing process, because I say the supply part covers all the other aspects which move together with the procurement. Let's look at the activities that are involved in the supply management. First, we talked of early supplier involvement in the design. That is one activity that has to be included. We have to involve the suppliers during the design of the product. As I said, supply management is right from the raw material supply until the final product is given to the final consumer. So we have to involve our suppliers when we are designing the product. Then use of cross-functional teams. Teams from other departments have to be involved also in the supply management. Then there is also strategic supply partnership. This is whereby a company or an organization will have to partner with a supplier to see how best they can provide the customer. Then when we talk of the partnership, it has to be in a way of a mutual agreement. We shall look at that ahead there also. We have long-term acquisition plan. Also, it's an activity under supply management. We have to see how we plan for our long-term running of the company. Continuous supply chain improvement also is part of it. Supply chain, we have what we call value addition in the supply chain system. So that is one thing that has to be also considered during the supply management. So the continuous supply chain improvement is very important. This includes listening to buyers' complaints, listening to planning our logistics. These are all the activities that has to be included so that we improve our supply chain system. Then improvement in the cooperative strategies. Also, how do we relate with the community? How do we relate with the other people? When we talk of cooperative, we talk of the giving back to the community. Also, we have to look at that in the supply chain. Let's look at material management in the supply chain as a concept in the supply chain. When we look at material, we are mostly looking at raw material, what we need for production. So we need to manage the flow of materials from the purchase to the distribution point. This is very important. So in our definition, we say material management, we define it as managing material flow from purchase to the distribution point. You buy the raw materials until it reaches the production part, then it is distributed accordingly on how it has to be used. So that is the material management process. And as we said before, when we talk of the word management, we should put the word planning in our mind, we should put the word controlling in our mind, then we should put the word coordinating in our mind. That is all under management. So that means we shall plan for the materials, we control how they will flow, and we also coordinate how they reach the required point. The key functions in material management, we have inventory and warehouse control. We have receiving and in-plant handling. We receive, then the in-plant, that is the production process, how the material is handled during the production process. When you talk of material, I may not go so deep. We have different types of materials that are used in production. That one I give it to the students to look at that. Then we also have the transportation and production scheduling, which is also part of the activity that is the material management. How raw materials are going to be transported and how the production is going to work out, the days, on which day do you need this material and how much is it needed for what quantity of production. Let's look at logistics management. Of course, that is still under supply chain management. When we talk of logistics, we say it's the strategic management that involves movement and storage of goods. We already touched this. I don't need to go so much. We already talked about logistics. You can refer to the previous slides. Let's see at the roles of the logistics management. We have links. It links inbound and outbound flow, incoming and the outgoing. As I said before, we are looking at a company that is buying materials, then also it does production, then it will supply those materials to the final user. So logistics will link the incoming and the outgoing of the final products. That is a very key role in the logistics management, in the logistics process. We have support customer satisfaction and profitability, which is also a very important concept or a role under logistics management that has to be taken into consideration. We have to support the customer satisfaction. Customers always have their own preferences, so we have to look at those preferences and how and where do they need it. All these questions has to be answered when we are doing production so that customers can be satisfied, not forgetting the profitability that comes out of all these decisions, because at the end of the day, the company has to maximize profits. Also have relationship to production. It's one part, as we made this one. I will not go so much to it because of time. Procurement support logistics effectively. We already looked at this as we talked before. We said without logistics, procurement cannot work effectively. When things are bought, they have to be transported to where they are needed. Let's go to supply chain management, which is now the continuing part of the supply chain, because the supply chain has to be managed. Our definition here is saying managing flow from suppliers to customers through integration. There are a series of activities that has to be involved to ensure that there is the flow of the products or raw materials from the supplier to the customer. So we manage that process. I will repeat this again. I say it involves the planning, it involves the controlling and the coordination of how these materials will flow. Supply chain goals. Of course, we have goals when we are managing the supply chain. First is to reduce costs. We ensure that cost is at its lowest so that the company can maximize profit. We improve efficiency to ensure that the resources that we have can produce can produce a product that we need and best resource implemented or best resource employment. Whatever resource we have, to ensure that it can produce exactly what we need at no additional cost or at no additional expense. So that is one of the goals in the supply chain, to ensure efficiency, deliver value to end user. That is the third point. We make sure that the customers that we are serving get worth what they have paid for. That is value for the end user. Then supply chain, we continue with activities. In the activities, we say customer relationship management is part of the activity, the supply chain management. We manage our relationship with customers to ensure that the complaints from customers are heard, then they are attended to, and they help us to improve even the production process. So we manage that relationship by ensuring that there is a communication system, there is a give back system to the customers and all that. Order fulfillment and demand planning is also another activity. I may not go so much to that. Order fulfillment, of course, is to ensure that we provide to customers at their satisfaction. Then we also plan our demand. When do customers want these products? At what time? And where do they need it? We plan for that. Another activity is procurement and product development. Of course, we ensure that the procurement is correctly and we produce the product that is needed. Facility and information structure. How is our facility set up and how do we manage information? This is very important. Flow of information is very important in the supply chain system, because at the end of the day, we need us to have a good communication with our customers as we also produce to them, and information comes in and also information goes out. Information is very important. As an activity also, we say the supply risk management and continuous improvement. Every supply system or every supply system or every supply chain system has risks that are involved. We shall look at those risks later that are involved in the supply chain system. So these risks have to be managed in a way to reduce losses that may be encountered during the process of supplying our customers. Supply chain as a network. Of course, I said before that supply chain activities start right from the raw materials purchase to the supply to the final producer. So there is a network. It's a chain of activities that are connected, that every activity has to flow or have to follow the other activity. More accurately called the supply network or web. Suppliers or customers are connected, strategic partnership and competition across the network. So all this are clearly explaining that the supply chain network or the supply chain management system is a network of activities that has to flow one after the other. Let's move on at the key supply chain capabilities. When we talk of the capabilities, we shall look at the partnering and the collaboration. What makes the supply chain very effective and what makes it to come out and give back what it's worth for. We have partnering. I've mentioned that partnering and collaboration. There must be a partnership within the supply chain system whereby suppliers must partner together with the consumers or the customers. There must be a good communication system so that there is flow of information and flow of products. Then there is resource integration. Resources have to be shared. Resources have to be shared. If it is internally, different departments have to come together and share information that is needed for an effective. For example, let's say procurement has to work closely with the production department. They share every resource that's available to see the success of the supply chain system. Real-time information process. Supply chain works with real-time information. We don't work in supply chain with historical information. Information that is accurate is needed during the supply chain process of flow. There are conflict resolution and motivation. That is also very important. As we said it before, during the supply chain, there are a series of people who work together. So definitely there will be a series of conflicts of interest. So this conflict of interest have to be resolved so that the supply chain can be successful. Decision making across the chain, there are different types of decision making that has to be made, and this decision making has to be based on facts and information that is on ground. Supply chain keeps on shifting. It keeps on shifting from one point to another in a way that the shifting is caused because we need improvement. We need the system to improve. So what are these shifts that are in the supply chain system? The first shift is from internal to value addition. Supply chain has to be shifted from an internal system to a system whereby value is added. Or in other words, the supply chain system has to have value addition. In the process, there must be a value added to a product that is moving within the supply chain system. Secondly, we say it has to have it shifts from tactical to strategic. When we shall continue, we shall look at the different steps of management, whereby we have the strategic, we have the tactical, and the operation. So the tactical is the middle level of management. So the supply chain has to be pushed to the top management so that they make strategic decisions so that it can improve. What does supply chain shift focus on? When we are shifting, we need to see that there is customer satisfaction. We need to see that there is cross-functional integration. Then we need to see continuous improvement in the supply chain system. So basically, students, we have talked much about the supply chain system, and we have looked at the factors that leads to its success. We have defined the different concepts that are involved in the supply chain and the activities that are also required in the supply chain system to see that it is successful. As I said before, supply chain is the backbone of logistics, or is the backbone of procurement. All the two has to be merged together in the supply chain because it is what covers them. And if there's a mistake or an error in the supply chain, it means there will be a mistake even in the logistics, even in the procurement. So there is need to attend closely to the supply chain management, the activities that have to flow. So thank you so much. In the next session, we shall look at sourcing, and see you then. Thank you so much.